we are going to hear from Leslie Michelson. I've always found Leslie's presentation to be not only incredibly entertaining, but also very informative. He's the former CEO of the Prostate Cancer Foundation and a man that just has incredible insight to healthcare, to us as people, and someone that I'm very pleased to introduce you all to. So with no further delay, Leslie Michelson.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm here because I believe in what we do. What I want to focus on today is talking about healthcare. We're now 12 years into the new century, and it's time to begin to ask the question, what will the historians acknowledge as the most significant accomplishment of the last 100 years? It's a question that I actually think about a lot. And there are a bunch of different potential answers to that. The first is it would be the creation of theoretical physics. Einstein's famous E equals mc squared was one of the most profound observations, literally, in the history of the world. He was 23 years old when he thought about that. Is it putting a man on the moon? Neil Armstrong, sadly deceased, the first human being ever to walk on the surface of the moon. I actually think there is a single answer to that question. There is a single answer as to what was the most remarkable accomplishment of the 20th century. And it's the increase in life expectancy at birth in the great United States of America. The human race has been around for about 500,000 years. In those 500,000 years, 2 million generations of human beings, we were able to achieve a 48-year life expectancy in 2 million generations. In 4 short generations, 100 years, we were able to increase that by 60%. Never in the history of the world has anything like that happened. How did it start? There are lots of starting points. The one that I think is the most interesting and important was 1854. There was a cholera epidemic in London. At the time, there was no germ theory of disease. There was a guy when the cholera epidemic occurred in 1854 by the name of John Snow. And what John Snow was able to demonstrate is that every single death from that cholera epidemic came from people who drank water from one single well. And in so doing, he established the basis for 2 things, the modern science of epidemiology and the germ theory of disease. As a result of that, here's what happened. We've got the typical common childhood diseases, which used to be largely lethal, on the run. The major infectious diseases of tuberculosis and influenza and pneumonia are also on the run because we have an array of antibiotics that are remarkably effective, particularly when used early and used properly for these diseases. We're living longer because we now understand how to defeat most of the infectious disorders. The question is, what is it that's going to get us, and what can we do as people to delay that fateful day? Those are the real questions. What is it that's going to get us, and what can we do to delay that fateful day? And it turns out it's really 2 things. It's cardiovascular disease and cancer. Every year we've got about 2.5 million Americans who succumb to something. I don't know anything about the people in the room, but what I do know is about 1/4 of you will succumb to cardiovascular disease, and about 1/4 of you will succumb to cancer. Those are the 2 big killers. So pause with me for a second on a serious note, and just imagine what the world would be like. Imagine what families would be like if we could actually do away with cardiovascular disease and cancer the way we've done away with tuberculosis and diphtheria and measles. Just imagine that for a second. It seems almost unimaginable, but I am in front of you today to tell you I actually think that can happen, all right? We are making extraordinary progress against those 2 major killers. We know very well how to prevent most cardiovascular disease today. It's diet and exercise and early detection and monitoring blood pressure and lipids. We have fabulous technology. If people would use it, we would thereby extend life a lot. And I said, as Mike knows, I spent 5 years as a CEO of the Prostate Cancer Foundation. And when I did that in the early part of this century, I was frankly quite pessimistic about our ability to defeat prostate cancer. I stand in front of you today incredibly optimistic about our ability to defeat prostate cancer and other cancers. The entire technological basis for that has changed. The first is genetics. So your genetics are your operating system, right? That's the code that runs your body. We have been working now for decades in decoding that human genome, and we have broken through with the technology to do that, and that is transforming what's going on. We are in a new realm, a very exciting realm, where we're going to be able to specifically address the specific genetic mutations that are causing the cancer. We now have technology that enables us to sequence that DNA much more rapidly. The first time we sequenced the DNA was about 15 years ago. It took billions of dollars, and it took 13 years. There are companies now that have machines, cost $175,000, able to sequence 3 billion base pairs of DNA, 2 hours. These technologies will be commonplace in 10 to 15 years. They're available today. They're saving lives, and they're very, very important. Well, you guys have been fabulous. I really want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Leslie.